everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pelt Music Podcast. Shortly, we'll be chatting with Jim, Lockey and the Solemn Sun, who released their new album, Colour, on July the 28th. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, Jim, Lockey, to the Pelt Music Podcast. Absolutely delighted to have you on this evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely over the moon to have you on, because we have had an advanced listen to Colour, your new album that's coming out, and we must say it is truly remarkable. Such a stunning piece of work. So really, really excited to talk to you about it. But we'll start off with 2000 Trees, because we're still trying to get over how wonderful that experience was. And obviously you played a set there, and it was a fantastic set. Listeners can read about it in our review of the festival. So how was it from your perspective? How was 2000 Trees this year?
Yeah, I mean, Trees for us has always been amazing. Such a nice thing to play, especially because it's local for us for one thing, but it's also like it's a big marker on the calendar for like local musicians. I think like the whole place is just full of people that we know that are in bands and stuff, and it's really nice to like hang out and see those people. But it was also, it was great to be back there kind of with new songs to play, and it felt like a bit of a marker, I guess, for our sort of restart as a band. We played a load of new stuff in that set, and considering that most people haven't heard any of those songs yet, I think it was really well received, and we've had like some really nice comments about it as well. So yeah, we feel quite honoured, to be honest, to have that sort of follow-in that kind of get on board with new stuff straight away. So yeah, very thankful for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think out of the 11 songs you played, 9 of them came from the new album, which has only got 10 songs on the album to start off with. So obviously, in a way, quite a brave decision on your part to do that. And obviously you've had a few songs go out there now, and you talked about the reception. So obviously live is one way to get some feedback to how the new material is going down, and of course with social media, reactions kind of instantaneous these days. So you've had the 3 pre-release singles come out, and obviously been able to debut some of them live. In general, then, how has that reaction been? Positive, I would assume.
Yeah, it's been surprisingly so. I think not that I guess there's always a bit of probably apprehension, I guess, when you put out new music. It's like, are the people that followed our band before gonna like this stuff, or is it about building a new audience for us, or like where does it leave us, I guess. But it's been overwhelmingly positive, I think. I think one of the good things about Colour is it kind of pulls a lot from everything we've done and how we like developed over a few records and stuff. So there's something in there for everyone, I think. So yeah, the response has been great. We also have this little WhatsApp group with about 100 odd people that are have been fans of the band or have supported us in the past. And they're always like the first people to get their hands on stuff. So we've sent out a few bits to them kind of before release dates and that kind of stuff. So it's great to kind of get their opinion on it first as well before it goes public, because you still got time to make some changes if they're needed, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a unique. I'm trying to think that they do this with movies and TV shows, don't they? Sort of fan testing, and obviously quite a unique way for you to be able to test out the music, and useful, I guess. Yeah,
for sure. We just it's really useful actually, that group as well for us, because it can kind of help us pick set lists and things like that, help us plot touring a bit better and things, and also just get to know people a bit better, because we probably only meet people for like a couple of minutes after a show anyway. So it's quite nice to have a bit more of a longer conversation. And like they can get involved and tell us what they think and stuff. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, no, it definitely is cool. I mean, technology these days is definitely grown the ability for fans and bands to connect with each other, and quite often that comes from Patreon and other like apps like that. But obviously, WhatsApp, I guess, works absolutely fine as well. So so diving into Colour, which I'm really keen to talk about. Obviously, you touched on it's got elements of the various sort of sounds that you've had in the past. And obviously, you started off as Jim Lockey in the Solemn Sun, adapted into just Solemn Sun, and obviously you've sort of transitioned back around again now. And each era has kind of had its own sort of defining sound, I've felt. But I agree with you in that colour really meshes them together really, really well. And obviously you returned under the full moniker back at 2000 Trees again in 2019. So I'm just keen to kind of explore, at what point did the album become something that you felt was a tangible goal that you could achieve? Whereabouts did you start the planning for it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, mate, that show in 2019 at Trees was kind of the trigger for it, if anything. We were invited back to do this. The Extra Mile took over a stage, basically invited us to come and play some songs. I think originally they wanted us to play Death in full, but there were some songs on that album we haven't played since we recorded them, basically. So we were like, can we play some other stuff? So yeah, we did like a set there that was really great. Like, we really loved it. It's probably one of our favorite shows. And that kind of started it again. I was sort of, I don't know, yeah, after that set we sort of chatted a bit, and I was like, we should definitely just do this again. Like, there's no reason for us to not do it. And we hadn't really made the decision, I guess, to come back as sort of Jim Lockey and Solemn Sun then. But we just decided that we'd get in a practice room really and start writing some bits. And that's how it started. I kind of just had a couple of songs and then a couple more come along, and then it kind of builds from there. But yeah, it's been a great process though, but it has kind of taken that long. So we're talking sort of about 3 and a bit years, I guess, until the record was like actually being recorded. So it's a hell of a process, but it just, the newer songs just fitted that old band better. They just didn't, the Solemn Sun stuff was kind of meant to be darker and it was heavier, and that was sort of the point, and that a shortened name fitted that better, I think. But yeah, this stuff was definitely a JL&TSS record for sure. So that's why we came back as that.
Yeah, no, and we're definitely glad you did, because Colour is, I say, for listeners that might not have listened to it yet, absolutely phenomenal piece of work. Really, really is. Definitely right in the album of the year conversation for me. It is that good. And obviously, with that process, and you said about how long it took, how did that process compare to your obviously time recording Atlases and Death in the past? And did the pandemic either help or hinder in any way? A lot of people have said it bought them extra time they didn't think they would have, for example.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Atlases is kind of like a collection of songs over a very long period of time, I think. So that's probably the one that we spend the longest on. Death as well was sort of built up over time. They do take a while to kind of come together. I think Colour is probably the only time I've really sat down to write an album, and that was kind of the point, really, I guess. Like, we had a couple of songs come in, and then the theme started to pull together for how I wanted it to be, and then I consciously sat down to do it, because we were originally thinking I would just do a few songs and just put them out kind of when they're ready, sort of thing, and just see how it goes. And then I had a strop and put my foot down and said, no, I want to make an album, because that's kind of how it works for me. Like, I think that we should do regular records and go and tour them and kind of explore those moments, kind of thing, as they happen. Like, they're a big marker in your life of like where you're at. And yeah, so I consciously sat down to write this as an album, which is great, and certainly something that I'd like to do in the future, because it really focused me. Pandemic wise, like, a lot of my life changed during the pandemic, so a lot of that triggered a lot of the writing in terms of like lyrically, and it did kind of force me to focus on music stuff more, because it kind of gave me a bit of an out from like what I was dealing with personally. So yeah, I think that it was an assistance for sure, I think, having that time. Although my job was still quite full on during pandemic, so days were very much still really busy, and I was just finding any downtime to kind of work on the record. And yeah, I guess there's one outlier though on Colour. The song You and I, which is at the end, is really, really old. I think it's originally from like late 2012, 2013, and it's been through probably 7 or 8 different versions. Like one was entirely electronic. It didn't quite branch into like ska or reggae, but I feel like it's been through basically everything else, and it's just never worked. It's always just been like, oh, I really like the lyric in this, but it's just not working. And then, yeah, it turns out when you stop thinking about something too much, it just sort of tends to happen. So that's kind of what happened with that one. And it's like the biggest finish of a song as well. So we put it at the end of the record because it felt like the right thing to do. But yeah, so I kind of, that's the main bit, I guess, is like we just focus on it, write that record as a record. And it feels like it is, if that makes sense. It feels a lot more coherent to me than probably the other ones were. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with the coherency of it. It is, as again, a whole piece of work. It just flows so well. It is so just enjoyable to listen to, and You and I is a fantastic end to that record for sure. And on the themes you touched on, obviously, as you say, Solemn Sun, the themes behind the songs that come out under that moniker were a lot darker. This record kind of feels like the polar opposite to that. It feels really uplifting and hopeful. Is that something you consciously were trying to achieve when looking at this record?
Absolutely. Yeah. I kind of like, I think it's fair to say that was probably like some of the lowest times for me personally. And I didn't want to write a sad record. Like, although a lot of the lyric is kind of quite hard and was hard for me to sort of write and perform a lot of the time, I wanted those songs to like pull me through that basically. So I guess my thought process on it was like, I want to make this positive. I knew I wanted it to come out in summer, and I knew that I wanted it to have like those moments of feeling summery and positive and forward thinking. And like, yeah, I don't know, just like celebrating that kind of new beginning sort of feel for the band, for one thing, but also for myself. It's very much like a new beginnings record. And I'm glad that comes across, because it's hard to know if you've sort of nailed that as a plan. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased that it does come across as being a positive record, because that's what it is. It's a huge positive step for me. It's a massive positive step for the band. And hopefully for the people that listen to it, hopefully there's things in there that people will connect to and kind of put their own meaning to. And yeah, it's just something for them to enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people will. I think there's so much relevance to a lot of the lyrics in there, and they can be interpreted different ways. But I guess the overarching story is that there is sort of light at the end of the tunnel. You know, there may be a dark period now, but you know, there is hope for the future, and that certainly shines through completely. And obviously 8-year gap, I believe it was, between the Solemn Sun EP and obviously Returning Now. And you've jumped straight back in with Extra Mile Recordings, which obviously we've had a number of Extra Mile guests on this podcast, and I've never heard a bad thing said about them. So I can imagine it was an easy decision. But you know, how supportive have they been of you coming back?
Yeah, they're great. They're really like patient, for one thing, which is really handy for us, because we're a band that apparently takes 8 years to make a record. But also they, yeah, like spoke to like Charlie, the guy who runs XM. Like, I spoke to him ages ago actually, at a show that I was putting on in Gloucester, and kind of said, "Oh, we're like messed around with some demos and stuff." And I was like, "Shall I send them over?" And he was like, "Yeah, definitely." And they were kind of straight away really interested in sort of taking it on. And they're wonderfully good at just leaving you to it, essentially. I think that they sign people they trust, essentially, I think. And that's kind of the impression that I get. It's sort of, I don't know. Yeah, they take the risk as well, I suppose, because we could have given them 3 songs that sounded great to them, and then like 7 horrible, I don't know what would be terrible for them. But it could be like a couple of killers and all filler from there, basically. But yeah, they're great for that, just leaving you to your own devices to a certain extent, and then stepping in when they need to, and like with helping get the record out to the right people and stuff.
Yeah, no, I've never heard a bad thing about Extra Mile, and there must be a degree of trust. And I mean, a point I would raise with listeners now is if you've discovered Jim Lockey and the Solemn Sun through colour, obviously, as I will rave about this album to anyone that I talk to right now, having listened to it on repeat for the last few days. Equally, you know, if you have discovered Jim through this album, do go and check out the back catalogue. Obviously, Atlases and Death and the EP that come out with Solemn Sun, because obviously, yeah, the trust must come from they can see the quality of work you've put out in the past. So there's got to be somewhat of an assumption that Jim's hopefully still got it.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Definitely. And another thing that's really taken me back with the album as a whole was the artwork. So I want to draw attention to that as well. Like, it just beautiful piece of artwork. So obviously, how did that materialize for you? How was it commissioned?
Yeah, it's so important to me about the package, basically, that the record comes in. And I knew really early on that we wanted to have like an artwork that was illustrated basically in that certain style, so, or similar to that certain style that I like. I just love all those sort of late like 70s records, like illustrated, like going into early 80s, like airbrushed artwork and that kind of thing. Just love it. I just think it looks amazing, and it felt like the right fit for the record. Because although production wise it sounds quite modern now, a lot of the stuff that we sort of built from, the roots of it that we built from, and the kind of albums that we were referencing at the time were all sort of like, I don't know, Fleetwood Mackie, like sort of 70s and 80s sort of music, like Phil Collins and that kind of stuff. And yeah, so we just wanted to have that artwork, but turns out those artists are quite difficult to find that are within the budget of a band like us as well, for one thing. So it took me about, I think it was about 6 months of searching for the right artist for it. Found loads that were great, that were commissioned on other work at the time, and yeah, like across the world essentially. And then one night I was out, I think I was at the pub with Andy actually, he plays bass in the band, and I was just scrolling through Instagram and I found this guy's work, this guy called Andre. I just loved it. There's a few pieces up there that he hadn't said were commissioned, so I just messaged him and said, like, is this for sale, basically? Because I really liked it and it kind of fit with the record. But yeah, he came back to me and said, well, it is, but I'd rather just work on it work on a thing for you that fits with the record and stuff. Now, like, Andre's like a young guy, lives in Georgia, in Europe, and like, he's been incredible. Like, for somebody that like essentially met on Instagram chat, and then we've had about 100 emails back and forth, I think, over the course of a couple of months. Sent him a load of really scatterbrained ideas about what I'd like it to look like, and yeah, he just comes back with that. I was yeah, we were so stoked about that, probably more stoked about the artwork than we were about the album in the end, to be honest. Like, the album's great, we're really proud of it, but his artwork's really stepped it up above that. And yeah, he really brought it to life, and I'm super pleased that he was able to do it. And I really hope to work with him again in the future, because he's like really great. Yeah. I don't know if we can tag him potentially in this podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'll send you the link through for people that only want to check out his other work and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, amazingly talented artist, obviously, and the artwork and the music fit. And I'm so glad you mentioned the 70s and 80s kind of aesthetic, because I picked up on that through the artwork and the music, and like, it's subtle enough that I was sort of thinking, is it just me that picks that up? Or yeah, I mean, perhaps the artwork a bit more. And yeah, no, obviously, yeah, I'm glad I'm not just going mad. It works so well.
I'm glad that people recognize that stuff as well, because we put a lot of time into thinking about this sort of thing. Like, it's always a shame if it goes over people's heads. It's fine, obviously, because it's sort of, everybody takes from it what they want, and that's great. But yeah, it's really nice for somebody to notice it, so thank you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I mean, obviously, thank you, because I say it's probably my favourite album of the year for sure thus far. And obviously, it all kick-started with Reno, which was the first sort of pre-release single that came out. So what about that song made you think, yeah, this is the song that needs to lead this new era for Jim Lockey and the Solemn Sun?
Yeah, I think that it's, for me, it's like it's a step change really in our sort of sound. It's very poppy. It's probably the poppiest thing I've ever written, really. And it's really positive. It's about like new beginnings, new love, that kind of thing. And it was also sort of like the opening line, that sort of I don't even know where to start, is like really important line on that album, because it's I don't know, although Reno is probably like the resolution of everything that happens after it on the album, it's like that sort of, that sentiment for me kind of has two sides. It's sort of like, that's exactly what I was thinking when everything kind of fell apart for me, and something that I was also thinking when everything started to rebuild. And it's very much like that line is like kind of encapsulates like the whole theme of the record for me. It's like a bookend essentially for like the whole thing. So it just felt really important that that was the first thing, like that's the first notion of this album that we're going to put out. And yeah, I guess we wanted to showcase the fact that we can write like that. We can write sort of poppier songs and enjoy them, and them not be like too cheesy, basically.
Yeah.
Like Andy's bass part in that song kind of saves it a bit for me, I think, in terms of like making me still feel like I'm a rock kid. In that, like his bass line's very sort of Death Cab like sort of style. So I don't know, yeah, it kind of pulls us a little bit away from like super cheesy pop stuff, but it's great. Like we really love that song, so, and it's fun to play.
Yeah, no, and it worked really well live at 2000 Trees as well. So yeah, just a fantastic song that just encapsulates the album as a whole for me. And another thing I was really glad about was that Reno, Medicine, and Mercy Wave have all got music videos, because on this podcast I always try and draw people's attention to the music videos, because they're a bit of a lost art, and one of the reasons for that, as you touched upon earlier, is budget. I mean, it is tough out there for musicians at the moment. We had a really frank and great conversation with a musician you may well be familiar with, Sean McGowan, recently on the podcast, and
sure.
he was really honest about how he'd had to finance the new album itself and the risks that he kind of took. And obviously music videos are not what they used to be. People don't sit and watch them all day, so that's normally one of the first things that just gets cut from the budget. No music videos for this. And yeah, to have a video to watch for all three of those songs was great for me in prepping for this. And just across to you, really, how did you conceptualize getting these videos out? Because there's a kind of similar aesthetic to them all that I think again fits the vibes of the album really well. So given what you've said about the amount of attention to detail you've put into this, I imagine it was quite important to you to have those videos as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think like, yeah, they're all kind of they do all sort of follow a theme, I think, and like a lot of the colors and stuff are very similar in all of them, and they all sort of lean a little bit on this a little bit like vintagey sort of look. And yeah, I mean, beginning with Reno, I guess we had like a really small budget for that. It was probably like a couple of £100, I think, to get the whole thing done. I think we spent most of that on that white suit that I wore. But yeah, we kind of wanted to go down this sort of Wes Anderson-y sort of style, where it's just all like straight, very square cut, and everything's just straightforward and like a little bit funny and a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and like just so we can have a bit of fun. Yeah. All of our previous videos have been very serious, and like we come across, I think, previously as like a very serious band that like never smiles or has a laugh or anything. Whereas we are completely the opposite in person and as people. So yeah, it was nice to show a little bit of that side of us, I think, and just say like, yeah, we don't take ourselves too seriously, honestly. We are like, we can have fun as well. So yeah, that was like Reno, which is great. The Medicine one was done by Harry Steele, who is absolutely slaying it at the moment in terms of his videos for everyone. He literally works with everyone now. He's so hard to get in with because he's just so busy. And his work's incredible. And we had a very simple concept for him for that video, and he absolutely smashed it. So yeah, forever pleased with that one. And the latest one for Mercy Wave works with a guy called Elliot, who is part of Lion Island Media, which is based like locally to us. And he did some great work as well. Loads of music videos that his company have done. And that was just in a practice room around the corner from ours. We just had managed to get some backdrops from like a shop that Chris used to run. And yeah, just shot it there and basically just had some great times on those shoots. Just kind of almost like the video is a bit secondary to us hanging out, having a good time. So yeah, so we really enjoyed them.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the, and I got the fun element definitely with the Reno video. And throughout all the videos, I did sit back and think they're enjoying making these, which is really, really nice to see. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad you said about that, for sure. And obviously, hopefully the listeners by now have realised through our conversation that colour is obviously something they need to go and check out, and not just take our word for it, but they need to go and listen to it, because they will not regret it. I've always enjoyed the band live, back in the day, to make us sound quite old, but obviously from the early 2010s, and obviously around the Deaf era and everything. I've really enjoyed the band live, and the set of trees was phenomenal. Despite, I was a bit surprised that they might play an older song in a minute, and we did get a couple, but obviously musically it was just absolutely fantastic again. So you've got another live show in the diary for the 30th of July in Gloucester, which will be gone by the time this podcast comes out, unfortunately. So listeners, you missed that one. However, is there going to be an opportunity for listeners to catch the band live over the next, say, 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of like the full band, we'll be announcing a tour for the end of October, early November. We're hoping that we can do that in the first week of August. We should be able to announce and go on sale. There's just a couple bits to finish basically on that, but I think we're up to like 11, 12 dates maybe. So it's like an okay one. It's over like a couple of weekends essentially. We kind of wanted to get something in this year to sort of start the campaign really with colour. But we very much think that sort of 2024 will be like the big push for us. We were a bit late for festival season and stuff this year. So hopefully another spring tour next year, and then into festival season, and hopefully some support shows as well. Dotted around that, I'm doing the odd solo show too. So depending on when this podcast comes out, I'm playing a solo show in Worcester at Paradiddles on like the 5th of August, which is a nice little afternoon show, and people can bring their kids to it and stuff as well. So nice little show. It would be cool for like families and stuff like that. I'll try not to swear as much as I normally do. And there should be a few other bits coming out at some point about like me doing solo shows, or potentially Chris might join me on a couple and things like that. So we'll be busy.
And I'm so glad to hear that.
All on the way.
Yeah, so glad to hear that you're going to be busy. And I will definitely be trying to pop along the shows. I definitely encourage listeners to. Best way, as we touched on right back at the start of the podcast, to stay up to date with anyone these days is social media. So I always give out the social handles. So Instagram is JL&TSS, Jim Lockey and the Solemn Sun abbreviated. So obviously listeners can go there. Facebook, Jim Lockey and the Solemn Sun, written out this time. And Twitter, although as of today, as we talk, it's probably not called Twitter anymore. X. I'm going to change up all of the artwork for Full Pelt, and I guess you're probably going to have to do some tweaking maybe on your. I don't think Elon Musk really thought about all of this, but JL&TSS with an underscore on the end. But we will have the links in the bio of the episode that listeners can click on, but it's just tradition now that I tend to read them out. So that's obviously the best place to stay up to date and see that tour when it's announced. Hopefully you can pick up a ticket and head along if you are listening. So it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. We've got one final segment, which is a new segment we brought in for the last 4 or 5 episodes now, and it seems to be going down really, really well. It's called Magic Wand. So I'm going to give you a magic wand, and you can change one thing about the music industry, but only one thing. So if I give you your wand, what are you going to change?
I don't know whether this is a controversial thing for me to say, but I work in like music promotion. So I'm a promoter by day, basically. I think the one thing that I would change is that all those people that go out and pay 20 quid to watch a tribute band every week would actually go out and watch their local bands that are in their area play instead, because it's quite saddening to see how many of those shows sell out and how many amazing local bands just don't get the support that they need. So that would be my magic wand for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that's controversial because I completely agree. I've never got tribute bands. Okay, if the artist is dead and there's no other way to see this music live, fair enough. But quite often there's tribute bands out there for bands that have only released one album, and you think, hang on a minute, I can easily see the real thing. Why would I go and see people pretending to be? Again, when you can go and check out a local artist. Another point I make on this podcast a lot is just the cost of ticket prices for arenas and stadiums. I was cheekily having a little look because I thought about heading along, and then I saw the price and I didn't. Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Tottenham Stadium last week, £200 for a standing ticket. Instead of that, I made the decision, no, I'm not going to pay £200 to multi-millionaires. I'd much rather go and see even just 2 or 3 local shows, and then all the beer money that I've saved as well. I always encourage listeners to do that. And it's interesting to hear, obviously, with the promotion work you do. We quite often do ask bands about their thoughts on the importance of the grassroots music industry, and obviously the venues around there. And it would be interesting, obviously, to get your thoughts. How important are these venues, the independent venues, for obviously bands like yourselves?
I mean, they're absolutely vital. There's no doubt about that. I think you just don't get to start at like bigger venues. Essentially, there's just no way to do it. I mean, the one that I do is like 400 cap, and we're too big really for like a lot of like smaller bands. But yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have ever been anything without those venues, really. Like, we always wanted to be a live band, and the only way to be able to do that is to be able to go out somewhere and play. Like, sitting in a practice room forever, occasionally writing records, isn't really the thing. Like, I don't know how people do that as a career. It's mental. Like, you need to get out and enjoy yourself as well. And it's just a great place for people to meet, isn't it, really? Like, most of the people that I know in and around Cheltenham are in bands. I think that's probably due to the fact that Cheltenham is proportionately full more of musicians than anything else, it seems. But yeah, I mean, most of my friends I know I've met from like either being in a band or watching bands or being drunk in that place after the band's finished. Like, that's kind of my entire life probably is based entirely on those things, and like that happened at those venues, at like the Frog and Fiddle and the Two Pigs in Cheltenham, and more historically the Welsh Harp in Gloucester. But yeah, those venues were like absolutely vital for sure, and continue to be as far as I can see. But yeah, just need more support, unless the landlords getting in and causing havoc, basically.
Exactly. No, definitely with you on that one. And hey, even the Red Hot Chili Peppers had to start a venue similar sized in the US, I would assume.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I do have to confess though, I mean, I absolutely back your decision there to do that. And I do support local, but I do go out to shows and stuff, and I'm big on spending my money there. But you are talking to a guy that literally just spent 300 quid on a Taylor Swift ticket.
So. Oh, you were successful, were you?
Yeah, so I can't I can't be too elitist in this, I guess. I did fold for that. So
no, but I do love a big show, and I've just paid £100 to go see Muse at the O2 in October. So sometimes it is justifiable, but sometimes
that's it. Yeah.
Go. Not this one. So yeah, no, definitely, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting with you, Jim. Obviously, Colour, not to inflate your ego too much again, is such a superb album, and one that I really, probably harshly didn't necessarily expect that album, as it were, when I pressed play on it. And obviously encourage listeners to check it out when it's out, and hopefully come along to a show and see them songs live. Completely fantastic bit of work. So thank you so much for giving up your time, obviously, and coming on to talk about it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. And honestly, your sort of understanding and insight on the record as well has been an absolute pleasure to hear about. And we really appreciate that support. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with Jim, Lockey and the Solemn Sun. Please do check out their new album, Colour, which is out on July 28th, and follow the band across all the social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. You can also stay up to date with Full Pelt. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt, and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast.